Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Deputy Editorial Director of Media Post, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to go behind the scenes from some of the most influential women marketers and sort of pull back the curtain on what they've been doing and what inspired them and really what brought them to this point. So I want to introduce today, I have Lauren O'Brien, and she is the CRO of Cloudastructure. Hey, Lauren.
Nice to see you, Lisa.
I know. Well, I have to, in full disclosure, Lauren and I went to high school together, uh, really good friends. We actually even went on a little excursion that was a little scandalous together. I won't really get into details, but we did get caught. Let's leave it at that. I was grounded for a month. So, but Lauren, that was like one of my most infamous times remembering that with you.
I will never forget it.
I know, and it's so funny when I tell people about it. I sound like such a rebel, but the whole thing was very innocent. We were just two kind of naive girls saying, "Okay, let's just do this." We were both heartbroken. With anyway.
I
Yeah.
know. I know.
So anyway, so we've had lots of awesome experiences together, and of course, life separated us a bit. We kept in touch a little bit randomly, and we reconnected a few years back. But right now, I want to just talk to you, Lauren, because obviously, you know, aside from the whole gullible thing, which we were both in competition to be the most gullible in high school, you always were the one who we knew was on the fast track and really knew what you wanted to do. So that's which is funny. I find that like a lot of times people, when I talk with them, a lot of the women I speak with maybe had a different track for themselves, but you knew marketing and you knew some sort of technology, and that was where you started your career. So, but again, it was also a time when, and continues to be a time when it's a little bit more of a boys club. So I want to hear about that. Like, one, when you first got into this, what did you experience, and how, if at all, has it evolved?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I've always loved technology. I don't know why. I've just always been drawn to it, fascinated by how it works. And one of my first jobs out of college was actually an economics job, which is what I was my undergraduate degree, and I loved it. It was great, just an amazing opportunity traveling all around the country, the world, really doing economics work, which is what my passion was. But I saw technology coming. I could feel, this was like pre-internet, believe it or not. And I saw it coming. I saw the wave. And when I was in business school, obviously at Berkeley, I could feel that tech was just so hot. It was just super exciting. And so I did join, technology quickly after that economics job. I saw, Next Computer was my first entree working with Steve Jobs,
I
believe it
know,
or not.
pretty impressive.
Yeah. And it was a great experience. And if I look at, I know you mentioned the old boys club, but when I look at my experiences, I feel like the old boys opened the doors. And they welcomed me and gave me amazing opportunities. And interestingly enough, it was generally men who were hiring me and bringing me on and saying and having confidence in me. And I don't know what was up with that. They could have easily back then just hired a man, but I think it was my passion for the technology, my excitement, and the team playerness. And once I got in there, sure, there's absolutely been instances where it became a closed door, men's club, but really more often than not, it's been positive teamwork. Tech people tend to be a little bit more advanced on the awareness spectrum of people and their contributions. Whereas I would say finance and economics, actually, it's a little bit more traditional. That's where I faced more discrimination, believe it or not, than in the technology space.
Really? Well,
So,
so do you think that, because I mean, obviously, when people are starting, I mean, I like to think that we can kind of help women who are just starting out of school and deciding on a career, one, but also how to sort of navigate it. And it sounds like, obviously you had that passion, but you knew what you were doing when it came to tech, like, and the skills superseded that any type of negative response from any men or women, whatever that may be. And it's just about knowing your stuff and then presenting it.
yeah. That's absolutely it. And if I was a woman, if I wanted to go into tech, I would absolutely go into it, even if the ratio, engineering, the ratios are still pretty poor. But I know a lot of young engineer women that are thriving. And yes, they're surrounded by a lot of men, but I have to say in my ranks right now, I'm always the only woman. But am I having a good time? Yes, I am, because it's what I love to do, and it's like a team sport, and oftentimes there's a lot of men on that team, but it's fine, and so it's worked out well. So I would tell young women, go for what you want, what you love, and what you're good at.
So not to be deterred in the sense of that good old boy thing, but also I think you hear from maybe not just women, with both men and women, but I think maybe women a little bit more so. It's not going to be fun enough, or it might be boring, or it might be, you know what I mean? Like it might be too technical, challenging in some ways. And so what do you say to that? Because you obviously, you knew what you were doing, but you were also able to navigate it to the level that you're at now.
Yeah, and I have to say, whenever anything gets boring for me, I have to move on. And I get bored easily, actually. Yeah, and so I'll move on from a job that becomes sort of rote, after a few years. If it's not challenging and I'm not taking the company to the next level, it's like, I think it's time for me to move on. And you guys are good now. I'm on to the next challenge.
Mhm.
And so, that's what I would encourage women to do. Continue to work in a job that you love, and develop that passion. Now, engineering for me, I'm not that excited about it. Some people they love it. They love programming. My son loves programming and he could do it all day long. I like business challenges. I like startup companies, or things where there's a challenge and you're trying to grow and build something and create something. And if I can have the freedom to build a team and create, and take something from nothing, like at my previous media company, they had never been profitable before in 10 years of business. In my first year as chief operating officer, they were profitable, and 3 years later they were on target to hit $1 million in profit. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to go to something else now. And that's just how it goes. And so I would continue to suggest to people to move when it's time to move. And you sort of need to know when it's time.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's a good advice to give, in the sense that don't look at something as for the next 20 years. I mean, I think that's more of our parents, or even more different industries. I mean, that's very much a marketing type of mentality. If you look at some of the most successful marketers, they have not been at the same, in general, in the same company for 10, 15 years
No,
as
not at all.
other businesses that might be the case. I know I'm very much like you. We were always very similar in that way. Like when I'm bored, I move on to the next. I start, when I was as a reporter and producing, I would start at a show and then got it to a point where I thought, and then, okay, what's next? And
Yeah.
I think that's important, to sort of not wall yourself in, and to really realize that it's not committing yourself to forever. It's committing yourself to right now and where you can take it.
Yeah. And not everybody's comfortable with that. There's risk involved, right? Changing jobs is always risky. But the reward for me is definitely there. And I just can't stay at a place where I get bored. So that's just, and bottom line, my level, I just can't, literally, I can't show up anymore.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, and it's time to move on.
You're not
So,
going to give it the best that you can if you're
yeah,
not
exactly.
about it
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly.
Well, to even
Yeah.
talking your career, because you have, I mean, as I said, you definitely had this marketing and technology, desire. That was the world you chose. But you went from different jobs. Now that sort of explains why. And then you also even, started your own company and were consulting.
Yeah.
And now here you are at Cloudastructure. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought to say Cloud Ashore. I don't know why. Anyway, at Cloudastructure. Talk about that path. Going into it, here we are talking about it years later, knowing it's not, we can move on when we want to. Did you know that starting out, or how did sort of that mentality evolve?
Yeah. I have to say, when I look at where I am now and all my jobs before, every single job has led to my skill set that is really good for me right now in this moment. Just the broad business skills, the sales, the marketing, and the operations, and running a startup company. In terms of, how it evolved, I mean, it was really, going from the economics job to Steve Jobs's company, getting exposed to all facets of tech within that company. I was an analyst. So my job was actually to go in and learn the fundamentals of how every department ran. It was perfect because I'm like, oh, this is how you run engineering. This is how you run sales. This is how you run marketing. And so I got to know the business side of all departments. So running a small startup, basically. And then I moved to a CRM company as a product manager. And that was a game changer for me because you're like a little mini CEO. And I was in charge of, their first enterprise solution, the virtual call center, and all the customers were their large multi-site customers. And, for me, that job was awesome because you had to be an evangelist, you had to sell, you had to market, but you also had to work with engineering to build it. So like there were so many dynamics to it, and roles. And that was a great experience because then I started to have a family after that job. And I was able to become a consultant and say, take these skills of growing, strategizing, building, working with engineering, doing a pitch, all of that stuff, plus my MBA. Started to have kid. I was working 20-hour days. And so on the second kid, I was like, I think it might be better for me to do my own stuff. And the market was hot and it was very lucrative to be a consultant back then, in the tech world in Silicon Valley, and it gave me the flexibility to start raising the kids. And I was my own boss. I could make my own time and contribute. And consulting is great that way. And then, I did that for a very long time and was very successful at it. But eventually I got drawn back into being part of a team. I wanted to be part of a team again. Consulting, you're always on the outside, even though I generally partnered with most of my companies and felt like I was part of the team. I never really was. And so then when the kids got a little older, I was ready to jump back into being part of a team. And for young moms, that's a tough decision, right? To step off the path. I was offered a job to be VP of a very big software company. And I turned it down to start my own consulting company. And I always look at that as a turning point, but I was like, if I do this, I'm never going to see my kids grow up, most likely, and I know it's always going to, maybe it won't be there, maybe it won't. And then I thought, no regrets. I never have any regrets. I never look back and say that was the wrong decision. It's just the way it was supposed to be. And it worked out great. So when the kids got older, I was amazed. I went back and I thought I was going to be in a low level position, and boom, I was COO. You know what I mean? It's so it all works out. If you keep your skills up, even through that child rearing and flexibility, you can step back in and just stay up to speed. And if you're a good, strong worker, you'll have the opportunities even in the future.
And I think that's a key point, what you're saying, that you step back for your family. And that is a decision that a lot of women struggle with in trying to decide what works best, and also financially what works best. And there's all different things that go into it. But those who do decide to go be more stay-at-home mom, you still kept your skills going. You still had that resume. You didn't have the gap of 10 years or whatever it may be, where you say you were a housewife or a mom, and I'm not at all. If anyone who just does that, it's not a just. It's just, obviously
it's a huge job, and it's so valuable. And and my kids are so appreciative. I was part of their growing up. I was able to volunteer, and do PTO and go to their sports games and all that because it was my company. I was running it.
Yep.
I was in charge of my destiny.
And that's, I think, the key thing, to somehow keep your feet in the water. And sometimes try something different, even as you said, like throughout your career, you've tried different, you've taken maybe different opportunities, and it gave you another skill set that now is what is proving valuable to you. So I think that those, just keep something going, however limited it may be, depending on your time. But as long as you have that, I think it then helps you when you do go back into the workforce, if you should decide to.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point when you say time, because you could still be incredible and only be putting in 20 hours a week. You really can. It's just a matter of how impactful you want to be with your time.
Yeah.
And so some women think, oh, I just can't do it because and granted, some people have family dynamics where it's a full-on job. But I was lucky enough that I can navigate multiple things, and I needed something to keep my interest mentally. And so it just worked for me.
And I love, and I had spoke with a woman a couple weeks ago, and exactly, she realized, and as after having a child, she had to become more efficient with her time and be
Yeah.
more, you know, take charge of her time. And it's funny. I was talking to my nephew last night. I was saying things. He was struggling with different things, and I'm like, be more efficient with. And he's like, that's right. And I think that is the best advice, because you're no good to anyone if you're doing things out of obligation or just because you're scattering yourself. If you really plan what you're doing and
Yeah.
know that I only have this much time for you because I need this much time for this,
Yeah.
you're going to be better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, even when I manage people now, there are certain people that get so much done in a limited time compared to people who tell me they're working 12 hours a day. And I'm like, well, I don't really care how many hours a day you're working. I just care what you're contributing,
Right.
So
Get it done.
yeah.
As you mentioned, you earned an MBA that was at UC Berkeley. It was in marketing and finance. And so I wanted to just have a little fun here. The school's motto is Fiat Lux. Is it Lux or Lux? You do know better than that. Well, anyway, I'll say Lux. And it means let light be made. So what does that mean to you? What makes your light?
Yeah. I would have to say everyone's on the planet to create, and so for me, though, in particular, it really resonates that when I look at that motto, light is creating for me. And what lights me up in the workplace is my contribution pulling, it's never a solo job. It's always a team for me anyway. And I love creating and building a team, and it does create light. Like we are right now at Cloudastructure, we are having so much fun. And it's because we're building something together. And yeah, I'm not drawing a picture or creating an art piece or something, but creating a company. And that's really fun. And it's fun to take it from nothing, literally last year, to something, like all the awards we've recently gotten, and the highest achievement in sales and revenue generation. I was like, wow, like it's just really fun to take it that way. And that's the light for me is that kind of energy that people are bringing to creating something in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, I know I didn't mention, but congratulations on the Gold Stevie Award that you and your team got. So obviously that's part of, as you said, you working with the team. It sounds like the teamwork is your light,
Yeah.
and the ultimate result, but it's that collaboration that brings
It-
you the happiness.
Yeah, and you might recall that from field hockey. That's still one of the highlights. I loved being on that team
I did.
and being a captain and all that. And it just was one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah,
So
no, I completely agree. I love being part of teams as well. Even the track team, which like for me, even though it was like singular, you work alone, but you're part of a team and you're going to, the meets and the this and that. And that's even watching what I watch on shows. It's like, I love when you see these people come together in teamwork, or
yeah,
watching a commercial and you see everyone sort of, band together. It just chokes me up. That to me is so valuable. And so I think
yeah,
is definitely a big part of, which is why I even love doing this. I love
yeah,
having this engagement and this connection.
yeah, yeah,
Great. Well, I want to keep with your tradition of the school, UC Berkeley. And they had a stone. Okay, let me get that right. It was at the Campanile. Am I saying that right?
yeah.
But anyway, a stone was there. And for good luck, you had to rub that ball in front of the Campanile in order to, for if you had a test coming, and they called it the 4.0 ball. One, did you have rub it? And two, do you have any superstitions today?
Yeah. No, I did not do that. In fact, I wasn't even aware of it, to tell you the truth.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But I wouldn't necessarily call it a superstition, but I really believe in vision. A lot of my consulting work was on vision and strategy. And if you set a vision, and it ties into manifestation, and some people would call that superstition, maybe to some degree, right? But I do believe the world is magical, and you can manifest whatever you want. I know there's a lot of people that, don't believe me when I say that. And I'm like, it absolutely works. Let me just tell you, if you can vision it and you can see it, and it's just going to happen. And it does. I mean, I just tell people all the time, the world is magic. So I guess that's a little superstitious in some ways, but if you don't believe in yourself and what you can do, the universe isn't going to believe in it either, and it's not going to send you things your way.
And that's
And
the key
yeah,
part of it, saying believe. Like
yeah,
you can vision something, like I can vision becoming the president of the United States. But if I don't truly have a passion for it and believe it, then that's not the same thing. So I think it's a combination of having that vision, but also truly believing that you can make it happen.
yeah. And Steve Jobs was the perfect creator of that, right? He believed so strongly in Apple and the brand and what it was going to do, that he literally, the energy behind his passion created what happened. If he didn't believe in it so much, it probably wouldn't have happened, you know? And so I think, it is something to think about and maybe test out as a young career person, just really believing in yourself and what you can achieve, and you'll be surprised. And what you want, setting those goals high beyond what you ever thought. Like when people tell me their goals, sometimes I say, I don't know if those are big enough for you. Like set it a little higher, and you'll be surprised. But there's not setting them high because why? Because they don't believe. Right? Oh, I don't think I could ever make that much money. I don't think I could ever be a secret. Well, then you never will, you know? So that's just how it is.
That is true. But okay, so for that person starting out and having that vision, now is it enough to just to have it, or do you believe, because there are others who do vision boards and do write or have to write it all out, or like what's your,
Yeah.
steps into doing
I,
it?
I actually do that sometimes if I want something, but a lot of times it just happens naturally for me. Like, this job, for example, I was at a media company and I was in operations, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I really want to go back to sales and marketing, and I want high tech, like artificial intelligence, and I want to run, sales and marketing and be C-level in that. And people were like, well, good luck with that. You're never going to, people literally told me, they're like, you can't make that transition. If I look at your resume, you have to do this. And the recruiter said the same thing. And like, literally everyone said no. And lo and behold, boom, I meet somebody who's running a company. We became friends, and I gave him advice. I started contracting and giving him sales and marketing advice, and then I got hired. And so it happens. If you want it and you really think you can do it, it will happen. And that's part of,
I
yeah.
also think part of that is also you put yourself out there too. You knew what you wanted, but then you offered this, working, helping someone, putting it out there, being, whether, and that could even be on LinkedIn through collaboration that way, like offering advice. Like you never know when you are doing something that may seem time consuming and not rewarding, where it could lead to if it's what you truly want.
Right. And I wanted to help them because it's what I wanted to do. Right. And so it was sort of a natural thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a good point. And so it does evolve that way, but you have to put energy behind your intention, is what they always say. Yeah.
definitely. You can't just sit, yeah, watching your favorite shows and say, okay, I really want to do that, but and not put it out into the world.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I definitely agree with that. I'm curious. I want to talk to you about what type we're seeing it more, especially these past couple of years. But it's not that it's new right now, but it's really where people are really expecting more from brands. And obviously, brands have had to step forward, and whether for certain stands, whatever it may be in terms of positive for Black Lives Matters, or the going against Asian hatred, and just like or just sustainability in the world. All of these things that are so important and so important now to consumers. But there's just a lot of different things that are changing. Always different cultures. We're always going to have these transitions. So a brand can't necessarily keep up with everything. And I don't mean those, what I just said are so valuable and they need to never go away. But I'm just saying there are lots of different cultures, things that happen and then they kind of fade. And how does a brand, what's the responsibility there? How does a brand keep up where you don't want to look inauthentic, but at the same point you want to meet the consumer's needs? What's the responsibility there?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, we're business to business, not consumers. So we're probably not as much in the spotlight that way. But I do think like 25 years ago, this wasn't even, no one even thought about any of this and the importance of this. And so what I'm seeing is if you're a, B2C kind of thing, then you're more in the spotlight, right? Because consumers will buy based on how,
Mhm.
I mean, there's ratings, right? These financial companies are good with spending their money on sustainable this, that, and the other thing, and they don't invest in oil or whatever they, however they rate, right? But for us, what I've noticed the difference being is the new hires, the young people that come on board, they ask you questions. They'll say, what are your diversity and inclusion initiatives? Where do you stand on this? And if you don't have a good answer there, they might not join your company, and so that's the part where you do have to decide as a company what you believe in and what you stand for. Fair, and like you said, there's some that just stand the test of time. You just want to be fair and equal to all and give opportunity where it's deserved. And that is ultimately what, we strive to do. I'm really big on culture, actually, especially in a small company. You get one or two folks who are not part of that same culture of, whatever the values are that you want that company to be, then it'll disrupt everything. And it actually causes the company not to succeed, if you ask me, because it creates such misalignment in terms of what you're trying to create that you don't create anything. And so, I do think having strong values in now it's more about attracting talent and having that and being authentic about it. And so I guess that's the answer.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree in the sense start inside, start within the company, because if you're touting all of these things, you know, to whatever, I mean, obviously you, as you said, you're B2B, but even as a business, another business might not want to work with a company that is not putting the values out that they want to work with. Obviously not as important as B2C with consumers,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you put out certain values in your marketing, but then you're not doing it, you're not, walking the walk internally, then that's going to come out as well. So I think that's
Yeah,
important.
and I will say one of our competitors has been noted for having really bad values. Their sales tactics, their marketing tactics are really getting a backlash in the industry. And that's actually helped us a little bit. But we're not like that at all. We're actually the exact opposite. We don't lock people into contracts. We don't trick them into doing this, that, and the other thing. And we don't treat our people poorly with, and having more of a sweatshop mentality, right? We let people live their lives, and of course, living your life and having things come up personally, that's number one, right? If things come up. Number two is, okay, you have a job, right? And do it well. So anyway, yeah, it's super important, and it can backfire if you have poor tactics and don't embrace those values. So
Yep. No, I agree. And well, now I want to jump in a little bit. I kind of think what you're going to say, but who knows? If you could live in any time period, what era would that be?
you would think it would be modern, right? But it's actually not.
I want to hear.
Okay. It's actually more like the 1800s, like if you look at Bridgerton, the series and Netflix or whatever.
Back there, but
Yeah, World War II, I'm really a big fan of that time frame too, like that kind of area. I love all those old books. And then the 1800s, I love the stories of all the royals. For some reason, I don't know why. So I just like that time period.
so is Bridgerton one of your little obsessions?
Oh, a little bit, yeah. So,
What is it about it, do you think?
you know, I was an English major, so reading the books back, of that time period, it's the way they spoke and dressed and the mannerisms. It's maybe because it's different. It's romantic in some ways and old fashioned. I mean, I guess I couldn't live in that period now because it's too old fashioned, but at the same time, there was something about it, I don't know, maybe the
Like
I can't put my finger on it. Men were chivalrous. They're not so chivalrous these days. So, I don't know.
I'm wondering if it's more like it's so regal. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they just everything is ornate and big and that kind of, although not always, but in the positive Bridgerton side of things, I guess.
Yeah, but then you have Charles Dickens and the poverty times and things like that. And that I really like that too. So it's just the time period. Maybe I lived a past life in that time period or not, but I'm drawn to it.
Memories. You have fun memories. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, this last question. If you couldn't be a marketer, what would you be?
Well, I'm already planning that next step. And not in the immediate future, but I always think, what could I do, And besides surfing all the time, which is my new passion, I like helping people. And so I think I'd like to be a coach, and not just help on the career side, but there's a lot of personal stuff behind the career, being as a person and your growth and understanding what you want and having confidence in yourself, all that stuff. And so I get really excited about helping people. And so I'd probably do that.
That's awesome. And the surfing, I'm so impressed. I tried surfing once when I first moved to California. Oh, I don't have the upper body strength. I spent the whole time chasing my board.
Yeah.
Like exhausted by the end of it. So
It is so exhausting. It is so exhausting. But I will say I just spent 6 months in Costa Rica, 6 months, 6 weeks. And I can now say that I can get on the board and I can go out beyond the white water and ride some waves. So I'm pretty excited about that.
well, maybe we'll try it. I'll give it another shot. It's been a while, but I
Yeah,
still have my upper.
you can come with me on my next trip.
I will definitely. I would love that. So, well,
Yeah.
Dawn, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking with me and sharing with this. And like I said, it's just funny to see from when we were, back in high school to see now at this point. And I
Yeah.
love that we can still connect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back then, even though years went by, and it's just, I think that's amazing to have that capacity. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. And of course, we do this each week. If you have a woman marketer who you want me to sort of rip back the curtain from, please let me know and I will do my best. Thanks.